good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our IPMA UCL Megaproject CEO Global Keynote Series. I'm Dr. Giuliano Denico from UCL, and on behalf of IPMA and UCL, it's our pleasure to welcome Stuart Crooks today, Managing Director of Hinkley Point C, for a keynote on the lessons of leadership and management from Hinkley to other megaprojects. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Stuart, and I'm sure we'll have a fantastic time on his career and lessons from Hinkley. Stuart, the floor is yours, and welcome.
Thank you, Giuliano. Just to check, can you hear me okay? Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining in this discussion really around mega projects and leadership. I'll take you through a bit about who I am, a bit about the project, and a bit about the key learnings from this project that you could take as for interest or for future development of your own thoughts and your own ideas. But first, next picture, please. Next slide. Today's safety message is around why is having a question attitude important to nuclear safety. Now, the way we run this in the project, every team, every day will have the same message, and they're encouraged to engage in a 2 to 3 minute debate around what does this mean for them and for their team. The key message I wanted to leave you with as a group is that nuclear safety and question attitude in a highly regulated, highly compliant industry, it's really important that people don't fall into the trap of simply thinking compliance is everything. It's not. We have what we call an engaged thinking organizational culture, which is continue to challenge everything around you, everybody around you all the time. And that encourages you to define an organization that's pretty much non-hierarchical. It encourages challenge at peer level, subordinate level, and at seniority level. And that's what drives the question attitude. And that question attitude is what drives performance and nuclear safety. So this is a bit of an example there of how we start all of our message with a safety message. We have a number of targets. We have clear targets: zero harm, zero events, time-driven, and cost-focused are our key pillars. And for us, we refer to that as safety, quality, time, and cost, but we always insist they are in that order. Safety first, quality second, time third, cost fourth. It's impossible to drive a mega project through cost, even though many of the accountants who look at this project think you can. You can't. You've got to drive it through safety, quality, schedule, and cost is then the outcome of those 4 pillars. We have 5 principles of values in this project: humility, positivity, respect, clarity, and solidarity. Everyone who joins this project, and today 11,000 people on site, but with a turnover of new trades coming, going, etc., quite a high turnover. We run about 4,000 to 5,000 inductions minimum per year, and each one of those people that come through our induction are required to sign to say they will abide by our charter of behaviour. The consequence of non-compliance with the behaviour, we're quite strict. We have a simple view is you have chosen not to work on our project. We don't exclude anyone. People simply exclude themselves by their behaviours. And that generally develops into what we consider to be a world-class project environment and world-class working practices. So if you can move to the next page, please. Julian, can you move to the next page, please?
We are ready there, Stuart.
Okay, you're already there. Just my screen. Thank you. So the next page really is a bit about who I am. Bit of a picture there. So that really is me in 1985, where I was voted Apprentice of the Year. I started my career in 1981, actually, as an apprentice electrician. And then later, having spent most of my, if not all of my career in nuclear, receiving the greatest pride of my life so far, an award from the Queen in 2019 to get CBE for services in nuclear. I often use this with our graduates because this common theme at the moment is that people feel they have to move companies every 2 or 3 years to progress their career. I've been effectively in the same same company all my career, and managed to move jobs, move careers within the company, and really enjoyed every time of it that's been so far. A bit about me. So I'm a physics graduate. So I did my degree at Manchester part-time, Manchester Polytechnic. I did my MBA at Lancaster part-time. So all of my education was part-time since the age of 16 and through the graduations. I'm a fellow of the Electrical Engineers and a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering. So my whole life in engineering, my father was a miner. My mother was a nursery nurse looking after special needs children. 3 children and 6 grandchildren so far. So outside of work, my main time is family and working closely with my family and developing their careers. So 43 years working already, and no intention of finishing anytime soon, and steps from being an apprentice all the way through to being a managing director of what is now the UK's largest mega project. If you go to the next picture, there's a short video about HPC. That you can have a look at quickly. It's a couple of minutes, but it gives you an oversight of what is HPC. So Juliana, if you could try and play that, please.
Welcome to Hinkley Point C, where we're building Britain's first nuclear power station in more than 30 years. Night and day, it'll power 6 million homes and will be crucial in helping us achieve net zero and stronger energy security. Right now, we're busy working towards a really big milestone in the project's construction. Let's go and find out more. Welcome to the heart of the first reactor building. The teams are getting ready to lift the 245-ton steel dome on top of the building. It will be a spectacular sight and a significant milestone for the project. Below me, we have installed the support ring, which will hold the reactor in place. The reactor arrived on site early this year and will be installed next year. You can see we poured the concrete around a big prefabricated pool, which will be home to the reactor for its operational life. Next, we'll fit the huge equipment hatch, which will be installed on this opening behind me. It will open and close, allowing equipment to be moved into the reactor building during construction and operation. In the coming months, we'll put the polar crane on the brackets which are being prepared above me. It's a huge rotating crane that will sit under the dome. It's under construction here on site and will be lifted in one giant piece. All these elements have to be completed before we can lift the dome, which is just over there. Good morning. We're here at the dome, where we're making the final preparations before the dome will be lifted into place later this year. Let's go and take a look. Wow, look around. We're now under the dome itself. We've spent a lot of time working on the steel structure, carrying out the manufacturing, welding, coating, and services installation and testing. And in just a few months, it'll be lifted on top of Unit 1 by Big Carl, the world's largest land-based crane. There's a real sense of anticipation and excitement, and we've been building for this moment since the project began. Once the dome is lifted, the first reactor building will be weatherproof, so mechanical and electrical teams can really get to work on installing the pipes, the equipment, and the cables. We'll also start introducing the big nuclear components like our steam generators, which have finished initial testing at Framatome in France. Now, all these components need to be controlled from one central point. And that central point is our main control room, and it will be installed right here on this concrete slab. We're busily finishing the walls that will sit around the main control room, but it won't be long before it'll look just like this. Our trainee reactor operators are already using the simulator, which is the exact replica of what the control room will eventually look like. The actual control room is on the other side of the site and will be lifted to where I'm standing before Christmas and then fitted out. It will control the reactor building and also the power generation in the turbine hall. Unit 1's turbine hall is really taking shape. Right here, we'll install the world's largest steam turbine, the Arabelle, made by our colleagues at General Electric. The turbine will generate electricity using steam generated from the heat in the reactors. These huge white structures above my head are the roof trusses. taking the hall to its full 50-meter height. We're now gearing up to install the 300-ton crane. It's under construction in Avonmouth and will be used to install and maintain the equipment in the turbine hall. So that's above ground. Now let's go underground. I'm now on my way out to the end of the tunnel, which will return water to the Bristol Channel, more than a mile out to sea. It's big enough to take a train, and it's one of 3 tunnels which will circulate our cooling water. I'm right at the end of the outfall tunnel, where 23 meters above us, 2 huge jacket vessels are drilling down through the seabed. This summer, they installed 6 giant steel casings to form shafts. We'll join it with the tunnels down here, and we'll dig out to make the connection. It's some of the most complex work in our entire project. Back here on shore, the pump house is progressing really well. Civil works are now 2/3 complete, and the mechanical and electrical works are underway. Now let's go and check out one of my favorite views of the site. From here, you have a great view of Unit 2, our second reactor. After slowing down during the pandemic, work is progressing well here, particularly on the concrete inner and outer containment structures on the reactor building. And it means we'll be ready to install the second steel inner ring later this year. Construction of the whole of Unit 2 and its systems is really benefiting from the lessons learned over at Unit 1. Many tasks are achieved in 20 to 30% less time than on Unit 1. That replication principle underpins our plans to build an identical power station at Sizewell in Suffolk. And that's it for our latest tour. I am so proud of the people working here on site and the thousands of people working on this project right across the world. Next time you're here, the dome will be on Unit 1 and the site will have transformed again. More of our mechanical and electrical work will be underway, and we'll be installing and testing more equipment so it's ready when the power station becomes operational. See you then. Thank you.
So Julian, if you can move on to the next slide, please. We'll now talk a little more about what is Hinkley Point C. It's much more than a power station. It's down in the southwest of England, and I've annotated on this graph where the existing nuclear fleet is currently located. All nuclear plants currently operational in the UK are all on the coast. So Hinkley Point C will be the first EPR, and it will go alongside Sizewell B, which is our first PWR, commissioned in 1996, and the 4 operational advanced gas reactors at Hartlepool, Heysham 1, Heysham 2 and Torness. The advanced gas reactors will come offline by the end of this decade, and by then we'll start to replace that with Hinkley Point, and then we'll start the construction of Sizewell B. So effectively, we're going to replace 15 reactors of the operating fleet with 5 new water reactors, and that will be the same equivalent of output and replace the 7% of UK's energy that we need to supply. I've left on the right-hand side a whole pile of statistics which tell you about Hinkley Point C as the engineering project. But what's more interesting to me is what is Hinkley beyond the engineering and the numbers that Simon's described and the numbers on the slide 5. So if you move to slide number 6, on slide number 6, it basically outlines the impact it's having on the UK economy. So just have a look at the numbers there, of numbers of suppliers, the numbers of billions that we're investing, and the number of jobs across the UK that we have impacted as a project. It's not just about the southwest of England. It goes much further than that. And every pound we spend in our project, around £2.50 is generated in wider economic value within the local region. Indeed, Bridgwater is one of the fastest growing towns now in the UK, and we recently were successful as a town in attracting JLR's new battery factory, the new gigafactory for Jaguar Land Rover. And one of the big attractions for them in coming to this region and selecting this area and this town was the fact that Hinkley Point C was here. It had a receptive community and a receptive local authority, which demonstrates positivity towards industrial growth for the aim of net zero. So we're very proud of that, and we're proud of our impact economically and commercially across the UK. We go to slide number 7. But we also recognise that in the UK, we've had 3 decades since the last power station where our skill sets have not been grown at the rate they need to be grown at. We invested heavily in the National College for Nuclear, we've built a construction skills and innovation centre here locally. We created a welding centre of excellence, a mechanical centre of excellence, and an electrical centre of excellence. So the message here is Hinkley Point cannot rely or could not rely on the existing UK skill sets. And we've had to build our own skills, training centres, develop our own people from scratch to be able to build and develop and grow this power station. We've done that through a managed set of diverse training routes, from taking semi-skilled people and making them skilled, taking non-skilled and creating skills. We've taken graduates and we've taken PhD people. We've developed people with disabilities. We've developed people in graduates and supported traineeships. We've attracted this from a whole source, fully inclusive approach to bringing skills and talent to this project. It's simply so big, we can't rely on other people to develop those pipelines for us. And we're very proud of what we've done to develop the pipelines to support our project. And indeed, we're working much closer now with others in the region to support their growth and their development as well, because we recognise you can't just take from the skills pool, you have to put back in again and grow and develop them. You move on to slide number 8, a bit more now about what is an EPR. So EPR, a European pressurized water reactor. It has a French mother, a German father, so it came from the heritage of the French nuclear fleet and the German nuclear fleet, both of which perform very well. So what we've got here is the best of the best in Central Europe of nuclear power plants. It's a large plant, it's got a lot of components, but it's also a generation 3 from a safety point of view, which is the latest generation of assets. And we know that being numbers 5 and 6, with numbers 1, 2, and 3 are now online, that when it's operational, the performance is very good, and it will produce, Hinkley Point C will produce, the largest nuclear-powered generator in the world. So we will have the largest of all of the EPRs, and that's a fact of the efficiency of the plant and the temperatures in the Bristol Channel. So we're building the best of the best, but doing so takes a long time. It requires exacting standards, and I often refer to it as watchmaking on an industrial scale. So a very strong heritage from Central Europe. It's an evolution from the existing plants that we know perform very well, and we're expecting full power operations at this plant for between 60 and 80 years. So we talk about Hinkley Point C as being a 100-year project, 10 years development, 10 years to build it, and then 60 to 80 years of operation before we start the decommissioning and cleanup of the site. The intent is to return Hinkley Point C back to the fields that we inherited and completely clean the site and hand it back to our future generations in back to before we constructed the site state. You move on to the next page, more about now how we do this. So how are we organised to deliver HPC? Well, I'm the MD of Hinkley Point, but Hinkley Point is more than a project. It's a business. So it's a fully standalone business whereby I employ around 1,500 people in the client base. We employ around about 11,000 on site, and across the UK today, around 20,000 people through different contracts. So it's a business. And if you put that alongside many other businesses, we'll spend around 4 billion per year at the moment, with the aim that when we come online at the end of the decade, we will be generating around 3 billion a year in revenues. So by any stretch as a business unit, HPC is up there in terms of the top of the FTSE. So my job is to run the company, not just projects. And that brings with it opportunity, but also brings with it challenge. The way we're organised is effectively into 4 functions. The bottom of the chart gives you the delivery function, where we're actually broken down into area management and then disciplines. So NSSS is the reactor, civil, obviously civil construction, MEH, mechanical, electrical and HVAC, and then I&C, instrumentation control. So we've got 4 programs and they cut across the areas in a fully matrix management. So the area people are responsible for making decisions day to day. The program's responsible for a longer timescale of operation, which cuts across the areas. The client is the future power station operations. So the operations team and the commissioning team are our future client. And then we have a support team, the traditional HR, legal, finance, and supply chain management. TCO is a technical organisation to demonstrate that we have technical knowledge and control for the whole of this asset. On top of that, obviously finance. Finance is a big factor in our project, and then assurance led by safety and regulation. So organisationally, key points are it's a business, not just a project. Delivery is effectively the project, and we have a technical support, business and client functions actually within the business units. And my responsibility is to manage all of that on behalf of my two shareholders, which are CGN and EDF, and they operate as shareholders. They're responsible for basically the financing and setting of the targets and the goals, and ultimately responsible for setting out my targets and challenges for the project. So that's how we're organised. Moving on to the next page, a little bit more about supply chain. So in terms of numbers, we've got something like over 400 tier one suppliers. However, 80% of our business is done with 16 tier one suppliers. But it gives you an idea of how we have to manage and integrate the whole of our complex European supply chain. We do so we're much more than just a client. We are the designer and the integrator. We are the nuclear licensee. We own the nuclear license site. The license is sat in my office. I'm responsible for the license and held to account by the regulator for all nuclear standards. Our job is to provide integration. It's a theme I'll come back to later about what makes good mega projects and not so good mega projects around the theme of interface management. Slide 11 really talks a little about, so how do we do that with our people? What is our approach to diversity and inclusion? And slide 11 outlines basically our approach to do that. This is not a choice to be the latest fashionable company. We genuinely believe deep down that the only way to build safe, secure nuclear energy is to really tap into every reach of society. And that drives your attitude and behaviour to diversity, to bring that diversity of thought. And we work incredibly hard to ensure everyone on this site feels included. Construction is traditionally a male-dominated environment. We have the largest amount of female representation for construction here in the UK. However, it's still only around 15% in site construction, which is nowhere near where we need it to be. We have about 102 nationalities the last time I looked working on this site. So you cannot be anything but fully diverse, fully inclusive of all those different nationalities and languages and cultures that bring together. What I'm really interested in is safety and quality of this project. So a really challenging environment to bring the very best out of everyone, to make sure that we get that diversity of thought. Next slide, please. It's slide 12. So on slide 12, what I've tried to draw here is a conclusion. So my last job before I came here was running the nuclear fleet in Britain. And Sizewell B, the last plant commissioned in 1996. So if you look at Sizewell B on the right-hand side, it gives you an idea of the demographic. So in Sizewell B, there are around about 22 reactor operators, of which one is female. The rest are all male from different backgrounds, mainly graduates. On HPC, we set ourselves a target to say we would have at least a representation in our control room that represented the national demographic. And you can see there we're already at 12 female operators and 34 male operators. We've got twice as many as Sizewell because with 2 units. But if you look at the pictures, you'll see the demographic is completely different. So Megan, Janan, all of these people are making a massive difference to the thought processes in a control room. And there is a genuine safety benefit from that diversity of thought. It's not just about fashion and about trying to do something to meet the latest targets. I genuinely believe that nuclear safety performance will be better for this diversity and mix of skills and talent, where we're going to engineer that in from day one to have that balanced workforce working in our power plant here in Britain. Move to slide 13. A bit here about contract management and client management. So we're about to enter what I think is the most difficult phase, which is what we call our MEH phase. So from civils to MEH. And you look on there, there's some amazingly big numbers of things that need to be done and equipment needs to be fitted in this phase. And we are not organised as a traditional contractor client, in that we have created what I describe as an integrated team. Building integrated teams, managing interfaces, managing logistics, it is the difference between being successful and not successful. And in my opinion, contracts will not sort this out for you. You have to manage people because people do business with people. So we've picked the best of the best in the UK. We've put them together in a loose framework. It's a non-incorporated JV and in the MEH Alliance, but we are the center of that. As a client, you cannot ever pass your risk to anyone else. I once worked with a supply chain director who told me not to worry, Stuart. I've bought the risk. It's in the fixed price contract. There is no such thing as a fixed price contract. Okay, the price is always reflective of risk, and the risk is always determined by who sits with what risk. And in our model, we believe integrated teams where the contract organizations sit in the same office, working on the same systems, working alongside the same goals and targets is by far the best way to manage that interface rather than trying to manage it through a contract. Okay, contracts are necessary, they're important, but they're subordinate to the delivery of the people working together with a common goal. Slide 14 then talks a little bit about the benefits of replication. Unit 1, Unit 2. So Unit 1 is a plant that we build where we can in terms of we learn our way through that. But Unit 2 is the build the plant that we should. And our plan is then to replicate Unit 2 into Sizewell, which will be a follow-on project. And so far, we have clear evidence which shows we can demonstrate learning in the order of 20 to 30% on every activity, whether you measure that by resources deployed or you measure it through cost or cash. It's around about a 20 to 30% benefit from Hinkley Point to 1 to Hinkley Point Unit 2. And we hope to continue that learning growth going forward. Most of that learning comes from people. It's all about the people and learning their way through these complex projects and making sure that we share that learning and capture it for future generations to come. And finally, just to finish off with people, there's a slide there, a picture of our annual Excellence Award. So this is pictures from last year, actually, in 2022 Excellence Awards. We're due to have the 23 ones very soon. And this is all about how do you get a mega project that's a decade long to align to suppliers who work on a 13-week cycle. So my focus is 10 years, their focus is 10 weeks. How do you align people around that goal? And we do it by breaking the project into mini projects and mini successes and making sure that you celebrate the mini projects and mini wins as well as the longer term ones. If you don't do that, it's very hard to maintain momentum for a decade. You have to break down the project and you have to celebrate the success at each and every step of the journey. How we do that is through these Excellence Awards, which are basically staff nominating staff for outstanding performance in the year. And there's no greater accolade than to be recognised by your peers for being an outstanding performer. So they just have some pictures of the winners from last year. So that's how we create a sense of momentum, how we create a sense of achievement, and how we drive our projects. So in summary, before I open to questions, Giuliano, it's very simple. Hinkley Point C is a business. It's a large business. It's a complex business. It's not just about being a power station. The second key point is we impact many, many things, stakeholders, local and national, international even. We host visits from around the world. We also make sure that we have a legacy to leave, and that legacy is more than just a nuclear power plant producing 7% of the UK's power needs. It's about developing people, developing skills. It's about being a beacon of excellence when it comes to diversity. It's about making sure that what we leave behind is a genuine societal benefit as opposed to a legacy of being a problem. We want to be seen as that societal benefit. We want to be recognised for our contribution, our net zero journey, but we also want to be recognised for our contribution of how we do that by the development of relationships, the development of contracting into a modern world, and the development of people and talent in a diverse and inclusive manner that really sets us out above the crowd. And that's really what I'm going to conclude with now and hand over and take any questions that you have in the next 27, 28 minutes. Giuliano, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Stuart, for a fantastic keynote on a comprehensive mega project that you are leading. We have a few questions coming, but please do feel free to send us more to the Q&A option, not through the chat, please, through the Q&A option. Perhaps let me start with a question, Stuart, on supply chain collaboration. And he made a very strong case of client and supply chain engagement to unlock outcomes for the project and to society. Yes. So I was wondering if you could give us a few examples of strategies or practices that you put in place to really unlock that value of a truly integrated client supply chain relationship.
Yeah, I think at the very highest level, the biggest problem with a mega project is the time and the time that the quarterly accounts that the contractors want to work to and the 10-year schedule you're working on and how you align that. So the first thing is to get an aligned set of goals and how you manage the weeks versus years problem. The second thing is to focus on what I call as the key principles: safety, quality, time, and cost. If you focus on those things, no one can argue with the priority of safety being first. Nobody can argue that quality is our nuclear safety tomorrow. So get a set of aligned values. The third thing I would say is walk in each other's shoes. Take time to understand. If you give an example of COVID, okay, so in COVID land, we had created the second largest bus company in the country. You know, we have a car park space for 400 people and we have to have 11,000 people a day on site. How do you do that? Well, networks of park and rides, buses, etc., etc. So we worked with the supply chain. We helped create a joint venture company, the second largest, as I say, in the UK, outside London, to create a bus company. Now, when you get into a COVID world and you take your site numbers down from 5,000 to 1,000, what do you do with a bus company? Our contract would have you believe that the best thing to do is terminate the contract and stop the spend on the project because it's not necessary. But then when you walk in the shoes of the bus company's shareholders and say, okay, we can't afford to pay you, there's no work, you're not bringing anybody else to work, what should we do together? You can genuinely get into solution orientation where the bus company will say to you, okay, let's stop the company. But then to restart the project, you're looking at a 1 to 2 year lead time to recover your bus drivers, your cleaners, your mechanics, your service engineers, your licenses, your warranties. And suddenly you realize that by stopping this contract might save you a few tens of millions, but the restart of it will cost you hundreds of millions. So a real partnership, I think, was to sit down with each of these companies and truly understand the economic and project insight. So we made many choices during COVID to maintain the site open, to maintain the production, even though we recognized we would be doing so inefficiently and we were driving inefficiencies, but our shareholders recognized that that was a pain they had to go through, because if you did not, by the time you come out of the other end, the pain will be even more significant. So there's just a bit of a message there about take time out to walk in each other's shoes and not always try and just react to what the contract says and look at the longer term picture. If you do that, what you'll do is you'll align your risk of the project with the rewards of the project. And in doing so, you build particularly strong relationships with people. And this strong theme I keep coming back to: people don't do business with contracts. People do business with people. You can always find a way through a contract that's simply a construct created by two parties, usually by a third-party law firm. But the contract is simply a construct of what you would wish to achieve. What you really achieve is what you do via that relationship and that partnership. So 4 key messages around collaboration and integrated teams: align goals, align values, walk in each other's shoes, and then align your risk and rewards. If you do all of that, you give yourself a very good chance of working, because you're working on a basis of trust and you're working on a basis of transparency, as opposed to contractual, if you like, lenses all the time.
Perfect. So that leads very nicely to a next set of questions emerging here around the client organization and the people that you employ. So I was wondering if you could reflect a little bit on the process of building capability at client side with your team before opening up the strategies of integrating with the supply chain. So perhaps the processes of designing that team and the structures you need in place, but also reflecting a little bit on the adaptability you might need as the project goes through several stages and you have different complexity levels.
I think it's a very good point. You read the Megaproject books and the Prince 5 books and all the wonderful theories on megaprojects. It'll all tell you the best thing to do as a client is to be a thin client and have a fat contractor, play golf Mondays and Fridays and just tell the contractors what to do, give them a clear spec and just manage through the contract and it'll all be fine, right? However, that's not the reality of our project. At the start of this project, 2016, I was given around 500 people, which was a very thin client to manage this mega project. And what you realize very, very quickly is on a nuclear power station, you've got to answer the question, is Hinkley Point C a conventional construction project with a nuclear tag, or is it a nuclear project built by conventional construction methods? And the answer is it's both. So we had two themes. We had a nuclear team who was saying it's very special, very different, and then what you get is a nuclear premium on the costs. I had another team who just said the concrete here is no different to HS2. It's no different to Terminal 5. It's no different to London Olympics. It's the same concrete. It's the same rebar. Yes, but there's an awful lot more of it here. And the demonstration of our safety case, if we get something wrong, is a far more impact on society than it would be if we got one of the others wrong. So it is very different, and you've got to bring those compositions together. So the first thing I had to do was to merge those two cultures, the nuclear culture and the construction culture, and get each of them to be respectful of the other's viewpoint. So neither was right, neither was wrong. They were both right and they were both wrong. So the first challenge in building a nuclear power plant is to build a combined project culture. And I've spoken to people at HS2, with Mark Thurston quite a lot. And the first thing any mega project director will tell you is create a project culture. What is it specific about your project? How do you create that sense of belonging and that sense of ownership? So as a client, that's our responsibility. The next step was really to understand the competence and capability of the suppliers versus what they tendered. So we've got into, again, in my opinion, a bit of a tailspin in the UK where people bid contracts. It's a race to the bottom. They win the contract, and then they start to think about how to deliver it, how much it will cost, who do they need to deliver it. So many of the suppliers bid contracts without clarity on who will deliver it, how they will deliver it, what the cost of delivery is, how they will manage their tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 suppliers. All of that is left in abeyance. And what you get is a wafer-thin bid which says it's all going to be fine, just trust me. And very soon in this phase of the project, we realized that underneath the bids were not, everything wasn't what we were told it was going to be. And there's two ways to react: either shout at the supplier or recognize and build relationships. What are they good at and what are you good at? And what you very quickly then realize is that you will always, as the client, own the risk. You will always own the risk. You will never sell that off to anyone else because your losses and what you have to lose far outweigh anything you can put in a commercial contract. So you then move through this phase of saying, okay, maybe suppliers don't have everything that we thought they would have. And how do we build that? You then have a choice. Do you build that in the contractor and the supplier, or do you build it in the client? And the answer is, well, you discuss with the contractor and you work through that collectively and collaboratively to decide who is best to own the risk. That's the key. It's always about owning risk. Who is the best person to own the risk? And often I would see contracts where they place risk on a supplier they simply couldn't manage. They didn't understand it, they didn't own it, and therefore it was always going to come back to you as a client. And in those cases, we've actually brought those risks back within the project for us to manage. So those are the first things. Step one, understand and build your culture. Step two, understand and drive who is doing what within that supply chain and who is best positioned to take that risk. And ultimately, it's about taking that risk. The third thing I would say is it's all about patience as well. Relationships take time to build. Okay. Often when you're negotiating contracts, it's usually a commercial team, quite adversarial. But of course, once the commercial contract's done and set in tablets of stone, then the real operation leaders arrive who are going to deliver the project. And that's where you really have to start to build, again, a new team for the execution phase. So you have to transition from development of a project through into delivery of that project. The delivery team is very much different to the development team. My predecessor in this role, Humphrey Carew-Hudson, did an outstanding job of developing the project. It took him 10 years before we started. But he was honest enough to say, I'm not a delivery and execution person. Stuart, it's your turn to do the next bit. Equally, there's no way I could have had the patience to do the development. So it's all about recognizing your skills and competencies, when to step aside and when to engage the supply chain to help you. So those are the key points I would say about building. And your final point is it's really around evolution. My team for next year will not be the same team as I had this year. I've roughly change probably about 10 to 20% of the executive team each year, not because they're bad people, but because the project evolves and I need to bring in new skills and competencies as we go through. So it's a natural evolution to face the challenges that are ahead of us and making sure you never get stale and think that one team can fix all, because it cannot. So it's a different time, different skills for different phases of the project.
Excellent. And I think this leads quite well to the next question about project professionals transitioning to your mega project. Yeah. So in a 10-year project, so how do you maintain that progression? How do you facilitate the promotion and progression of your project managers? Maintaining a core group and transitioning a few, but what are the structures that you are creating internally to promote that?
I think the two things that within the project, you got to create a culture where performance is rewarded, and performance is rewarded not necessarily just by money. Performance is rewarded by scope, and we have people here who started as joiners 6 years ago who are now construction managers. So generally, you have to demonstrate by example that the successful and those that they deliver have a clear path through to the top of our organization. I was fortunate to go from being an apprentice electrician to the MD of a huge organization. And I always feel that I had the opportunity to go through any door I chose to, provided I performed and delivered. So step one is make sure within your own organization, you create opportunity and reward success and give people that chance to move. After all, we employ across our supply chain, in our project company, 1,500 people, but across the supply chain, 25,000 people. It's a huge company. There is opportunities for everyone to grow and develop in whatever skills they want. So step two says, if people can't move within the client organization, I'm very open for them to move into the contract organizations and vice versa. So I have a very open, transparent relationship with our suppliers, that we don't steal each other's people because there's no benefit. But we do allow controlled and managed career paths to go from one to the other. I have people in the client today who used to be in the contractor. I have people in the contractor who used to be in the client. I actually think that instills positive growth because people understand both sides of the equation. So first step, internal growth. Second step, ensure a wider growth path across the tier 1, tier 2 suppliers as well. The third thing is that we are part of EDF, and we are a large company in the UK employing lots of people in solar, renewables. We have people employed in customers division and existing nuclear division. So we've got people doing many different jobs, and we employ a very flexible approach to allow people to move from one company to another. So technically, we work in different companies and many of us have different shareholders, but we see ourselves as part of the energy firm that's working hard to deliver net zero across our solar, wind and nuclear projects. So we swap people between our renewables projects and Hinkley Point. We swap people between our energy business and Hinkley Point. We move people from our existing nuclear fleet to customers, to renewables. So we have a very adult conversation at senior level, looking at talent and providing that opportunity. So I think if you provide these opportunities and allow people to grow and develop, they will take them. And the final step is, I never part company with anyone on bad terms. If people choose to leave the project and go and work at HS2, for example, I'd have a conversation with Mark Thurston and I'd give them an honest appraisal of the individual. Equally, Mark would also give me the same appraisal of people moving between HS2 and Hinkley Point. I never saw HS2 as a competitor. I still don't see it as a competitor. I see it as another mega project, another great opportunity for people to develop their skills and competencies. So we move people around. It's not a massive number of people. So the best thing with people development is never fight it, never constrain people, allow people to grow, develop, and go where they want to go, support them in that growth, and you'll get the benefit back. You'll get people coming back to you all the time. And I see too many companies fighting all the time over resource, and it doesn't work really. People are their own people. They will choose their careers, not you. Best you do is help them grow and develop and feel valued, and they want to stay with you. You look at the stats, most people who stay with us beyond 18 months stay with us for 5 years. Most people who leave within the first 18 months. That's what the stats tell us. So we're working really hard with those that join, the new joiners, to say, tell us about your experience. Tell us about your learning. Tell me how I can improve your learning opportunity. And then at the end of the day, people want to leave and go elsewhere. Then they go with my best wishes, and the door's always open for them to return. And that creates a psychologically safe environment where everyone can grow, everyone can develop, and people can fulfill their total potential. And it's done in a non-adversarial, positive, and encouraging culture.
Fantastic. That was very comprehensive. I'm delighted to see the focus and emphasis on people and trajectories to move forward. Perhaps if we could reflect a little bit on the transition between Hinkley and Sizewell and the replication principle that we saw from Unit 1 to Unit 2 in the video, and what do you expect, or the structures you're putting in place to transition people, processes, skills from Hinkley to Sizewell? And when is that happening? Is there a defined timeline for that to happen? And perhaps reflecting in different stages, as you mentioned, there you have probably development and beginning of delivery, and you're already in full delivery at Hinkley. So many people curious on that particular replication and transition from one project to another.
So again, having been around in nuclear for 4 decades now, I can tell you replication is a godsend for the future operators. We currently operate many AGRs that are not the same, and that's been quite a challenge for us over the last 4 decades. We have a great opportunity to do it right and do it well. Replication between Hinkley and Sizewell is in the upper 90%. Some things are different because physically the site is different. On this side of the country, we've got a 12 to 14 meter high tide. On the other side, it's 5 to 6 meters. So North Sea versus Bristol Channel in the Atlantic. So you've got to change some of the basic design because of the geology and the geography of the sites. But other than that, our aim is to keep everything the same. The second thing I'd say about replication is it's not just about the design. That is the what you build. Keeping the what the same is really important. But the real knowledge is in the how you build it. So we're very open that people think replication, do everything the same way. That's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is we're going to replicate the what we build, but the how we build it will constantly look for innovation, the application of science, the application of technology. How can we build the plants safer, quicker, better in Sizewell without changing the basic engineering design? Because the basic design is what really takes the time. To give you a timeline, so Hinkley Point C was based on a design in France of Flamanville that was commenced in 2008. So we took the 2008 design. We put it through our regulator. The regulator approved the design at basic level in 2012. And it's taken 10 years to implement all the requested changes from that GDA process into our basic design. So the real issue now is we have that to replicate that design for both the plant, the equipment, and the way the plant is put together. But we are still going to look for improvements. And the best source of that replication improvement is people. I have people on site here who've worked on Unit 1, and they say, when I do this on Unit 2, I am not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way. But the design is the same. And that is really the innovation that you really look for in the human element of the project is how can we do this better? How can we do it safer, to a better quality, and therefore the cost will be lower and the schedule will be shorter. So replication is really all about don't change the what, keep the what, change the how. What does that mean for our suppliers? So by the end of this year, I will have 70% of all my equipment delivered to site, either site or Bristol or in local storage. By the end of next year, 80%. But by the end of 2024, early 2025, much of our equipment is going to be finished. Now, the manufacturers, where we put a huge investment into to get the equipment manufactured to the right quality, if they do not follow on with Sizewell, they will lose. These manufacturers aren't just going to sit there and wait for the next one sometime in the millennia. They're going to say, well, I'm on the end of that production run. If you want more for Sizewell, I need the order today. So I'm working very closely with Nigel Cann, who heads up the Sizewell construction project. Nigel used to work with me here on Hinkley. And we're very attuned to making sure that the only thing we change in the manufacturer is the delivery address. Because often you fall into the trap of saying, I really want the same pump, but can you make it to the latest European regulations, please? And the supplier says, yes, of course, that'll be an extra 30%. Rather than saying, I just want another set of what you built for Hinkley and deliver to Suffolk instead of Somerset, please. And if we do that, then we'll get a replicated supply chain. And that means all of the skills and knowledge we've built up over the last 5 or 6 years are maintained, and it will deliver you a very high standard of replication. So 3 key points on replication. Number 1 is don't change the what, the basic design. Number 2, focus on the how and get the innovation about how you can do it, because there's benefit to be had there. And the third thing is make sure you don't ask the suppliers to deliver anything different, use the same standards, use the same components, and just build sets numbers 3 and 4, just change the delivery address. Now, the final point I'd make is on people. If you have 2 companies with 2 different shareholders, they only focus on their returns to their shareholders. And the great danger between Hinkley and Sizewell is you get into a talent competition where Sizewell shareholders say, I want the best. I want people who know what they're doing. Oh, where are they? They're at Hinkley Point. It's bad for Sizewell to take Hinkley people early because Hinkley won't finish. Sizewell needs Hinkley to finish. Equally, from a Hinkley point of view, it's not good for me to withhold too many people from Sizewell because that damages them as well. So we've created a thing called the EPR program. And that program is a joint venture company, and it's between Hinkley and Sizewell. And in that, Nigel Cann and I are if you like, the shareholders of that company. And all of the knowledgeable people from Hinkley that have knowledge will go into EPR program, supply chain people. And the same supply chain person working on Hinkley will work on Sizewell for the same equipment. The suppliers know them already, and that allows them continued career growth. They will move into a centralized program with the leader of that program. I will gift those resources into it, and Nigel and I will then share the costs of that program. It gives stability for employment, it gives stability for knowledge transfer, and it's a managed process. It's not an unmanaged process. So we've got some particular examples of how we do it, but the main thing is we know that we coexist as 2 projects, and each one is dependent on the other for its success. And doing that relationship-wise, but also contractually, helps make sure people have career certainty, career growth and career management going forward as they join the program. And if the government should choose to build another one, EPR 5 and 6, somewhere else in the country, then the EPR program people will move to support that one as well. So it's a continuous process of people development.
Fantastic. Conscious of time, Stuart, but I do want to make one final question before opening up for your final remarks. We had a lot of attention here on leadership and in particular on the non-hierarchical point that you mentioned several times, and several questions in the line of, can you elaborate a little bit on the structures or practices or events or mechanisms that you put in place actually to remove this sense of hierarchical structure and create the culture that you mentioned of a flat, non-hierarchical leadership approach that enable people to fulfill their objectives?
So a couple of things, really. The first thing I would say is you have to choose the people, not the badge. You know, people often look through selection processes looking at the badges. I look at people as people who will bring skills. You know, we have an individual on our board of directors who comes from a mixed race family back in the 1960s. He's been very successful in his career. But behind that, what I tapped into is this individual's resilience. You know, being brought up in a mixed race family going back 30, 40 years was very challenging. Not like it's much less challenging today. I'm not saying it's not challenging, but it's less challenging. And he brings with it a whole set of resilience which you need for the project. So what I mean by choose the person, not the badge, I chose him because of his background, his resilience, but also his technical excellence and his visible leadership. That's the most important thing you can look for. And there's so many guidance today about you choose people for this reason, that reason, that reason. For me, I choose the person, not the badge. What do they bring? I need people on my project who are resilient, technically competent, great at coaching. So you really look for people who can represent the best in the values of the project. People who represent the very best in what you wanted, which is a beacon of excellence of diversity. So you choose people to align to the vision and the values of your project. The second point is about hierarchy. So email's a wonderful thing and it's a disastrous thing, depending on your perspective. I'm very much a believer that we should all trust everyone within our business, but we should verify what they tell us. That's not about not believing them, but every week I spend 1 to 2 days on this project. I walk from top to bottom. I know many of the people by name who work for the contractors, and I go and talk to them about how they feel, what is going on, what's in their world, what's stopping them perform better, what are the blockers, what are the imperatives. And by that, I really dismantle this concept of hierarchical reporting. In a project of this size, you get lots of people in PMO producing lots of paper, lots of data. It's immense. I can measure anything you wish me to measure, but nothing beats talking to people at the sharp end saying, how is it for you? And that principle I describe as trust but verify, and it destroys hierarchy because I can go talk to anyone I want and get any answer I want. So there is no point any of my executive or any of the leadership team feeling they can manage my perception by managing data they present to me. Data's helpful, gives you guidance, but you have to get beyond that and you have to get into the trust but verify. On boards, please, avoid halo effects. I deliberately go out of my way to choose people who are not like me, people who are different to me. Because if you do that, you will genuinely get a better diversity of thought and better challenges within your board. But to do that, you really need to understand yourself. So open yourselves up to feedback on your performance, 360-degree feedback, listen to feedback, really analyze your own performance and your own self. And if you do that, then you will understand better what it takes for others to manage in concert with you. So it takes a lot of humility, but don't think it's your job to act as the senior person choosing everyone else. In many ways, your team choose you. If they like you, they'll perform. If they don't like you, they won't perform and you'll be out of a job. So you have to think of it as subservient leadership, where they are looking at you, they are choosing you to be their leader, not the other way around. And if you think of those principles of avoiding halo effects, subservient leadership, making sure you're all shaped by your experiences, bring those experiences to the board, and making sure you create a culture where everyone can bring their very best to the board every day and bring to the project every day their very best of themselves, you will create this non-hierarchical culture. And the best way to destroy culture and destroy hierarchy is by going out in the field and talking to people.
Brilliant. That was fantastic, Stuart. Before I hand it over to you again for final remarks on the future generation and the key messages that you want to emphasize that you would like to see for the next 10, 15 years in the industry, can I just thank you very much for the very rich and comprehensive tour through leadership and management practices at Hinkley and potential transferring mechanisms to Sido. That was absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure people really enjoyed your perspective on the leadership practices going forward.
I think I just leave you with a very short message. Throughout my career, I've been very fortunate to be given the opportunity to be myself and grow. I've given lots of opportunities to change jobs, change direction. But it's always down to you as individuals to choose your career path. It's your career. It doesn't belong to the company. It belongs to you. And when opportunities are presented, my advice is to take the opportunity. It will always lead to somewhere you never expected it to lead to. And every job is an adventure. If you approach it from that perspective, you'll enjoy your time, you'll learn a lot. And if you don't like it, you'll still learn a lot. You'll learn what you don't like. So never turn down an opportunity to learn, never turn down an opportunity to grow, and keep growing and learning throughout your career, and never be afraid of change or challenge. And be yourselves, be happy. And if you be happy, be yourselves, then you'll grow and you'll be a great leader of the future for our industry. And I look forward to hopefully meeting a number of you coming to join us here. And if you're interested, we've got a fantastic website. Have a look at it, and careers across our industry, and dive into there and see what you can find. And if you need any advice, please get in touch.
Fantastic. Stuart, on behalf of IPMA and also UCL, thank you so much for joining us again and making the time to share your personal journey and Hinkley's structures and perspectives on leadership. I'm sure this was a fantastic learning point to everyone who joined us this afternoon. So
thank you.
We wish you a very nice end of Friday and a good weekend ahead. And until the next time in the next Megaproject CEO keynote.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.